Okay, thank you so much, and thank you for still being here during the last session. So yes, I'm going to talk about innovation-led growth. That's the first thing, and the role of IP in a platform economy, because a lot of things that we have here today were true, like in the industrial age, but maybe are going to change in the new industrial revolution that was referred to, the fourth industrial revolution, and we heard about this this morning during the keynote speeches. Several times it was referred to the new digital age. So maybe things are going to change, and I want to just discuss this with you. But first we're going to talk about innovation-led growth. And is innovation and growth really important? So I'm having a test for you. So here you see a company. This company actually exists. And it's a real-life company. And it had a CEO from 85 to 2000, and then from 2000 to 2014, and then it changed again the CEO. And the question to you is, you don't have to answer, but just think about it. The question to you is, the CEO here in the middle, did he do a really good job, yes or no? Well, the company was actually growing. If you just look at the revenue, was going up. The total employees is really going up. The gross profit is going up, net income, everything is going up. So you would expect that because this company is growing, the shareholders, the investors, would love this company as well, right? Just say yes, please. Thank you, thank you. So if we all agree that this company is actually growing and investors would like growth, we would probably see an increase of the share price. Well, that was not the case. The company is Microsoft, and what you see here, of course, an increase of the share price when we have the first CEO, Bill Gates, and then we had Steve Ballmer, and even though the company was growing, the stock price didn't move that much. And now we have the new CEO, Satya Nadella, and all of a sudden, stock price is going to the roof, and I'm very happy because I stepped in when he stepped in, so I feel good about this. But here you see that growth doesn't lead to an increase of the stock price. Then the question is, why is this? Well, it has everything to do with innovation. Here we see Bill Gates, Steve Ballmer, Satya Nadella. And what happened with Steve Ballmer was, even though the company was growing, it lost and it missed the boat 5 times on innovation. And that's what investors don't like. Because investors, as was mentioned several times today, they look at the future growth, the future prospect. And if you don't embrace innovation as a company, things will not go down well. And this is very important to Samsung, to LG, to all the Japanese big companies, to the big companies in the US, and also Philips, because that's where I work. That's why I was the only person in the room who knew the air fryer of Philips, because I worked there. So this is important. So what did he miss? Well, he missed search, he lost to Google, smartphones losing to Apple and Samsung, mobile operating systems losing to Google and Apple, media losing to Apple, Netflix, cloud losing to Amazon. So this just simple example shows how important innovation-led growth actually is. It's the only way to attract investors. Well, the new CEO, he understands this very well. So here we see Satya Nadella, and he understands that we are living in a different world, a world that we refer to several times today. So we always had to deal with innovation, and I just focus on the digital innovation here. So we had the PC, we had the internet, we had smartphones, social media, we have smart speakers, smart watches these days. We are here, and what we see an exponential growth of technology. We see machine learning, sensors, cloud, augmented reality, virtual reality, the Internet of Things, blockchain was mentioned today as well, distributed ledger technology, neural networks, 3D printing, and I can add many more, but they didn't fit on the slide. But a lot of things are happening, and these innovations, you should not look at these innovations in isolation. They are amplifying each other, they are accelerating each other, and that's why many believe that we see an exponential growth of technology. And that's where we as companies live today. And this has some implications for IP that I will discuss later. So he understands that we move from products from a product-oriented society to a service-oriented society, where data has become the new oil and intelligent information has become the new currency. And I have, not on this slide here, but I have some other research that shows that the biggest companies in the world, if you just look at the market capitalization, in 2006, oil and gas companies and finance companies, banks. 2011, the same thing. For 2016, Apple, Alphabet, which is Google, Facebook, Microsoft, these are the biggest companies in the world. Why? They are data-driven. They see that data is the new oil, and they also understand that services are more important than the products. So Satya Nadella is a very interesting guy. He understood that things were changing. He wasn't focusing anymore on the products, but focusing on services. And yes, he took innovation, of course, very seriously. You can see that here. So he's investing in AI talent. He also understands that just not the hard assets on the balance sheet are important, but more like the soft skills, the human skills. And so he's investing in talent, and he's also doing a lot in IP. They invest a lot in IP, and they are the number 2 in the world if you look at IP applications in artificial intelligence. And artificial intelligence is one of the things that are very important these days. So that's what Satya Nadella is doing. And I could stop here and then say, well, you know, it's very important to focus on innovation, to focus on the new innovation, the data-driven innovation. And yes, intellectual property rights, really important, the same as in the old days. However, something else is going on in the world. And that's what we should focus on. And this is, of course, very important if we look at the policies around IP. One thing that Satya Nadella understands is that you cannot do it alone. And open innovation, that was mentioned before, has become very important, but he takes it one step further. It's not just open innovation. He believes in ecosystems. He believes in communities. So one of the companies that Microsoft acquired was GitHub. And GitHub is an open source software company. And here you see the founders of GitHub very happy because it was just acquired by Microsoft, Satya Nadella, and on the right-hand side, she's the CFO of Microsoft. They're all very young. And what he believes, Satya Nadella, this is his quote, in short, developers will be at the center of solving the world's most pressing challenges. However, the real power comes when every developer can create together, collaborate, share code, and build on each other's work. In all walks of life, we see the power of communities. And this is true for software development and developers. We hear this morning, how important it is that we collaborate, that we build on each other's work. We hear that when we had the example of the lamps. But right now, the world is going so fast that we have to create communities in order to do this. And that's what he understands. So, with respect to IP, all of a sudden, Microsoft changed their policies. Under Steve Ballmer, it was a very close hierarchical company. Everything happened inside. So yes, a lot of IP registration there as well. And they were protecting their IP. They were enforcing it. As soon as you infringed it, they would go after you. Right now, they open up. So here you see Microsoft gives 500 patents to startups. Microsoft joins Open Innovation Network to help protect Linux and open source. Microsoft joins LOT Network, helping protect developers against patent assertion. And the LOT network, I don't have time to explain it in detail, but you should definitely go to their website. They have an increasing number of companies joining them. And what they do is they open up their patent portfolio in order to make sure that all the members are protected. So whenever they sell their IP, you will not get like these patent trolls that they go after you because you have a license. So they open up LOT network. Microsoft open sources its patent portfolio. And this is the reason why Microsoft bounced back. Not only that the CEO understood that innovation was very important, but also that he could only innovate fast enough if he would open up the company. And that's what he did. So this is a very important observation. Now, Microsoft is not the only company that's doing this. Toyota, in April 2019, opened up their patent portfolio related to the hybrid technology. And there are 3 reasons for these companies to do this. One, they understand that collaboration is better than going to court, because just protecting your IP will cost a lot of money, and that's not good. But that's not the main reason. Another reason is that by opening up, this gives Toyota a way to sell their hybrid technology, to actually make sure that people are using it. The world of electrical cars is going fast, and they don't want to lose. By opening up, more people are going to use it, and then they hope that they come to Toyota for advice. The same thing with Microsoft. Microsoft is opening their IP portfolio because they hope that these companies that use it will also use their cloud services. So instead of having the business model of registering IP and then licensing it out, they basically say, no, we open up. Everybody can use my IP, so don't get me wrong, IP is still important, but we open it up. But the business model will not be licensing, the business model will be collaborating and providing services to the people that use your technology. It's very interesting. So Toyota basically copied Tesla in this, and we'll get back to that later. So when we see all this, what are then the lessons for policymakers? And here I turn to Europe, because I am from Europe, and I know a bit more about Europe than Asia. Now in Europe we have a problem, a big problem. On the one hand side we have Asia, and on the other hand we have the United States. And they are going much faster if you look at innovation, particularly digital innovation. So there's a huge gap, a digital gap, between Europe and the United States and between Europe and Asia. And also with respect to artificial intelligence, there's a huge gap. And we see that here. I like this WIPO slide. Most patent registrations in the area of artificial intelligence are in the United States and in Asia. Europe is kind of behind. So what should we do in Europe to bridge or close that, gap, and to make Europe more attractive? And what has IP to do with this? That's what we are going to look at. Now, we talked about startups during the first session. Here you see the investments in artificial intelligence startups in Europe, Asia, and the United States. Most investments take place in the US. China number 2, and the EU is really behind. And if you look at the European Union, it's basically the United Kingdom that takes all the money. And we know Brexit, so maybe they are not even part of the European Union anymore. But what's more interesting is that the startups that we see in the United Kingdom are mostly acquired by US companies. Makes it really interesting. We see, of course, a lot of startups in the EU using AI, but they are not really AI companies. That's what we find when you do some research. So we have this gap. If we look at artificial intelligence acquisitions, there are a lot of acquisitions, but most acquisitions go to the US. And we talked about Microsoft before, so I just looked at in 2018, Microsoft acquired 4 AI companies. So they don't stay in Europe, they actually go to either US, China, or other parts in Asia. So we have a problem, and I'm not the only one who sees this. There's this group, the European Laboratory for Learning and Intelligent Systems. They call themselves ALICE, and you see this group. This group, they know everything about AI. They are AI specialists, much smarter than I am. And they see that as a problem, and they say, well, in order for Europe to bridge this gap, there are 3 solutions. 1, they have to invest in the infrastructure. 2, they have to invest in training and outreach. 3, they have to invest in research. And this is all true. However, I think we can learn something else from the examples that I mentioned before. What we should do in Europe and what maybe Korea could also do. There are 5 growth policy proposals that I will just quickly go through. Number 1, if we talk about patents and IP, what about patenting and registering patents in the area of algorithms? That's still difficult, software and algorithms. Now, the European Patent Office, they came up with a kind of strategy recently, and they say, well, you can register an AI patent or an algorithm if it has a technical character, a technical purpose, and it should be an inventive step. It's all very technical. It was just introduced, so we have to see how this is going to develop. But the first thing that we have to do in order to see more innovation-led growth is making sure that patents and patentability follows the digital transformation. Number 2, encourage platform companies. What I liked about the third presenter, I forgot his name, of the first group, he had a platform. And he understands that platforms are very important. And platforms are, as he explained very well, are these open groups where people share, where you have people that contribute something and you have some consumers. And they create value in that platform. Now, the world's largest tech companies in the world are all platforms. Apple, Amazon, Alphabet, Microsoft, Facebook, Alibaba, Tencent, Netflix, and Financial, Salesforce, Booking Holdings. They all have some platform elements there. Problem for Europe, no European companies here. So another big gap, another thing that you have to take into account if you want to spur innovation. Number 3, build communities. Understand, as I will show you on the next slide, understand what open source actually means. Because if you want to innovate fast these days, you cannot do it alone. And just having a big company and collaborating with certain startups is not going to do it either. You have to do something in open source. If you want US example, Walmart. Walmart is a retailer, but right now has several platforms. One platform is an open source platform that actually helped them going through the digital transformation. So it helps them innovate faster. So that's number 3. Number 4, understand open source. And here bring back Microsoft and Toyota strategy to open up the IP portfolios. Tesla did the same thing, and they called this the Tesla Pledge. And it was completely open source, but it did not really work. So Tesla came up with some explanation and said, well, we can only give you you are only allowed to use our patent if you act in good faith. That was the first thing, but then good faith was not detailed enough. So when you go to Tesla's website today, they give like 3 points to make clear what good faith is. So just when you are like a patent officer, or you want to create a patent or IP policy, think about this open source, think about patent pledges, and think about how this could work out. Because Microsoft is doing it, Toyota is doing it, Tesla is doing it, and there's several other companies are doing it as well, but they do it in a different way. They're all experimenting, and I think this is an area where policymakers can do something as well. And then number 5, we heard this word before. These days it's not about collaborations, it's not about joint ventures, it's not anymore about open innovation, it's not about platforms, it's basically about building ecosystems. And that's the 5th thing that we should do. We should think about the technology, how can we build communities, what has open source to do with it, and how can we actually protect our patents, and how do platforms actually work. If we really understand this as policymakers, you can actually help companies, and you will definitely be one of the winners of the future. To show you, it's my last slide, how this would work out, I'm working now together with the European Space Agency. And the European Space Agency has a lot of data. They call this Earth observation data. And they have a lot of algorithms. And they really can do a lot of things with this data. But they are losing from the NASA and Google Earth Engine. And they think, well, with all this data, with all this knowledge, we should do more. And I'm helping them creating this ecosystem with the technology, how to set up communities, how to think about open source, and how to actually create platforms. When you do this, these 5 policies will actually help Europe, but also Korea, because you will have the same issues to be a winner in the future, particularly when you look at what's happening in the United States and in China. Thank you very much.
네, 열정적인 발표를 해주신 베르뮬렌 교수님께 다시 한번 감사드립니다.